Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Rowell. Alright, I've been teasing you about this video for a couple weeks now. This is actually based on some advice that Jordan gave me. As you know, he's been telling me some kind of tips and tricks to improve and boost my views on my channel. And he's given me some real simple ones like ideas on how to rename my videos, things like renumbering my system so it's a little easier to understand, things like making playlists. But he's also given me a few more complicated things, like the idea of maybe doing some epic videos to help me boost my channel. One of the things that he's identified that he thinks is a potential problem with me growing my channel significantly is the fact that too many of my videos kind of are just of limited niche interests that are only interesting to people who live in Waco or my loyal fans who watch me every day. So this was actually a suggestion that he gave to me. Today we are at the Texas Book Depository in Dallas, Texas, and we're going to spend the next couple days talking about the John F. Kennedy assassination, which happened right here. That is the six-story building, a six-story window right there where Lee Harvey Oswald took out John F. Kennedy, right almost where I'm standing. So we're going to, like I said, this is going to take about 3 days to get through it. The first day we're going to look at the Texas Book Depository and Dealey Plaza. On day 2, we're going to retrace the final steps of Lee Harvey Oswald from the moment he completed the assassination to the point where he was arrested in Dallas, in the Texas movie theater. And then on day 3, we're going to talk about Lee Harvey Oswald and the days he spent in jail. We're going to discuss Jack Ruby, and ultimately we're going to go visit the grave of Lee Harvey Oswald. So come on, I think this is going to be interesting. So I've been told I can't shoot any video in here, but I can shoot as many photos as I want. So I'm actually going to take a cue from Jordan and just do a little photo montage for this part. This is a photo that was shot at 12:40 p.m., about 10 minutes after the assassination, and the police have ordered that the Texas Book Depository be sealed and searched. During the presidential procession, photographer Tom Dillard thought he saw a rifle hanging out of the 6th floor window of the Texas Book Depository, and he snapped this photo. Unfortunately, the rifle had been pulled back in at this point, and there was nothing to see. This is an image of Lee Harvey Oswald's application to work at the Texas Book Depository. It was filled out about a month before the assassination. This is the corner window of the 6th floor where Lee Harvey Oswald fired on the president, and it shows how the boxes were set up to block what was happening at the window. Several boxes were set up in front of the window to act as a sniper's perch, something that Lee Harvey Oswald could stabilize his rifle on when he was firing at the president. This image shows a couple of spent shell casings near the corner window. The police found this empty bag with Oswald's prints on it and believe it was the bag he used to bring the rifle into the Texas Book Depository building. This is a view out of the 6th floor corner window that Oswald had as he fired onto the presidential motorcade. Now this is actually the corner window as it's set up today in the museum exhibit. This is behind glass so you can't get at it, but you kind of get an idea how everything was set up at the time. And this is another angle of the same corner window. This is a view out of the window adjacent to the one that Oswald fired his weapon through. And even though the trees today are larger, you can still see the spots on the ground where the presidential motorcade was when the 2 shots struck the president. At 2:20 p.m. on November 22, 1963, President Kennedy's casket is loaded onto Air Force One at Dallas Love Field. Onlookers include Jacqueline Kennedy and presidential advisors Lawrence O'Brien and Dave Powers. And of course, this is a famous image of Lyndon B. Johnson being sworn in as President of the United States on Air Force One with Jacqueline Kennedy at his side. It should be noted that she's still wearing the same blood-soaked outfit that she was wearing when her husband was assassinated. This is the suit and the hat that Dallas Police Homicide Detective Jim Lavelle was wearing when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot. Those are also the same pair of handcuffs that connected Jim Lavelle to Lee Harvey Oswald. And of course, this is a famous shot of Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald. This is a hat that Jack Ruby was wearing when he shot Lee Harvey Oswald. This is the sword that Lieutenant William F. Lee of the U.S. Marine Corps was wearing as he stood at guard at the head of John F. Kennedy's casket as it lay in state. Following the funeral mass on Monday, this is the president's casket being moved to Arlington National Cemetery. This is the same make and model of camera that Abraham Zapruder used to shoot the famous Zapruder film. There were a large number of photographs taken around the time of the assassination, and these are some of those photos and the cameras that shot them. The Warren Commission agreed that this bullet was the one that passed through President Kennedy's neck and caused the wounds to Governor Connally. This is a mock-up diagram of Dealey Plaza showing the projected bullet trajectories out of the 6th floor Texas Depository building. This is Lee Harvey Oswald's gold wedding ring made in the Soviet Union. And this is an image of Lee Harvey Oswald wearing that ring. It's noted that as per Russian tradition, he was wearing it on his right hand. This is the scene of Patrolman J.D. Tippit's murder in Oak Cliff. He was shot several times at close range with a .38 revolver at about 1:15 p.m. This is a photo of Lee Harvey Oswald holding the rifle that he shot John F. Kennedy with. During his interrogation, Lee Harvey Oswald claimed that this image was staged. This is a photograph of the actual weapon found near the 6th floor window. These are images of Lee Harvey Oswald's hands and fingerprints, and those prints were found on the butt of the rifle and all over the place at the shooting scene. This is a rifle similar to the model used by Lee Harvey Oswald to assassinate the president. The actual weapon is now in the National Archives. This is a photograph of the rifle where Lee Harvey Oswald hid it after the assassination. This was Oswald's clipboard found near the staircase on December 2nd. None of his orders had been filled. This is the known and speculated path that Lee Harvey Oswald followed from the 2nd floor of the Texas Book Depository as he exited the building. This is the 2nd floor lunchroom where Oswald stopped and was intercepted by the police before he exited the building. This was about 12:32 p.m. This is the stairwell that Oswald used to escape from the 6th floor down to the 2nd floor lunchroom. And this is the entrance to the stairwell from the 6th floor. So now we're going to go outside and take a look at Dealey Plaza in the area. This is basically Houston Street here, and Kennedy came around this corner here onto Elm Street, which goes right down there under the famous triple bridge that you see in all those famous videos. And of course, this is the Texas Book Depository, and it's that second window down on the far right there. That's the 6th floor window where Oswald fired his rifle. Now Oswald managed to get 3 shots off. One of them completely missed and hit the curb somewhere, and I guess some people got hit by shrapnel from that. The second shot happened when the limousine was right here. This is the one that went through Kennedy's neck. They've got the mark on the ground there. And then the third X is down here in the middle of the street, and this was the fatal shot. At that point, the limousine accelerated and went down the hill. So this is where the fatal shot was here. And if we flip around here, this is the famous grassy knoll that we've all heard about. And Abraham Zapruder was sitting up right here in front of this post here. In fact, there's kind of a flat area in the ground. I'm guessing a lot of people like to be photographed right here. So I'm guessing that's where he was. That's where the photos all kind of show he was. So, you know, this was his view of the day. That light pole was still there. There was a sign out there, which doesn't appear to be there anymore. And the kill shot was literally right in front of him. So I showed you the image of all the cameras. Yeah, a lot of those cameras were on the other side of the street. A few of them were over here on the grassy knoll area. And since the Zapruder tape was kind of the core piece of information, a lot of those other photos were lined up with keyframes on the Zapruder film to provide context for figuring out where and when things happened. And of course, just like in many places in Texas, there's a historical marker on the side of the Texas Book Depository. We go basically into the history of the building, but obviously the last paragraph says on November 22nd, 1963, the building gained national notoriety when Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly shot and killed President John F. Kennedy from a 6th floor window as a presidential motorcade passed this site. And also right out here in front of the site where the fatal shot was fired, there's a historical marker on the grassy knoll here. It basically says Dealey Plaza has been designated a National Historic Landmark. This site possesses national significance in commemorating the history of the United States of America. 1993, National Park Service, United States Department of the Interior. So basically right out here on the marker, you can get up there and you can look and see exactly where the 6th floor window was. Now they note that the trees have grown up a lot since those days, so in the earlier days when the trees were smaller, there was a more unobstructed view. But even in the final shot there, you know, it was there was a clear shot with a window there. So we're at the rear of the Texas Depository building now, basically the opposite corner from where Oswald took his shot out the window of the 6th floor. He basically hit his rifle afterwards, proceeded back to this corner of the building, and took that stairwell down on this corner to the 2nd floor where he was encountered by Dallas police officer Marion L. Baker, who drew his gun on him. The patrolman was also accompanied by Oswald's supervisor, Roy Truly, and Roy Truly identified Oswald as an employee, and as a result, Baker allowed him to leave. As we look at this main 7-story building here, it appears that that was the original building, and this section here was added afterwards when they turned it into a museum, because this area down here has the ticket booth to get in and the gift shop at the end. And obviously that part there where the elevator is, that wasn't there either at the time. So when he did is he came down this stairwell down into the 2nd floor. The report that I read indicated he went out the front of the building on that side. So this building is actually still in use today, other than just being a museum. It's now the Dallas County Administration Building, and the first 5 floors are dedicated to that, and then floors 6 and 7 are all for the museum. If you came out the front door onto Elm Street, which is here, once again we're on the opposite end of the building where that stairwell was, then he would have come out this door. So he proceeded down Elm Street. What he was trying to do now is to get to his boarding house on Beckley. And best way to do that was to catch a bus up here a few blocks. There was a bus stop about 7 blocks up Elm Street. So let's just kind of walk up there and see what we see. Now the information about where the street was, it was Elm Street and Murphy. And Elm Street and Murphy don't meet up anymore. It appears that in the late 60s, a big massive hotel was built on the location. It looks like it just basically took up the whole street. So we can't even really get to Murphy and Elm don't match up anymore, but we can go show you where it would have been, where the bus stop would have been that he picked up. So right now, about 7 blocks that way is the Texas Book Depository. Oswald worked his way to about here. This is Elm Street and the Westin Hotel, and he picked up a bus, and there's a bus stop right here. Now the report says he picked up the bus at Elm and Murphy. Well, Murphy used to come straight across right through the middle of this hotel, and of course when this hotel was built, that all went away. But like I said, there is a bus stop right here, so this may very well have been the bus stop that Oswald got picked up on the bus, and the bus started heading right back into the Dealey Plaza area. And apparently what happened, and this is all kind of speculation, but Oswald apparently got off the bus 2 blocks later because the traffic was allegedly really bad. And you can imagine that, because if the president had been assassinated 7 blocks that way in front of the Texas Book Depository building, you can count on the fact that the police locked everything down. So by this point, the traffic would have backed up to here, and the bus just wouldn't have been going anywhere. So Oswald rode the bus for about 2 blocks to Lamar, and when we get to Lamar, we'll talk a little bit further about that. All right, so here we are at Lamar and Elm, and basically that's the Westin Hotel right there. So you can see how far we came, and in that short distance, the traffic got so bad that Oswald just elected to get off the bus and walk this way on Lamar. Because 4 blocks up Lamar is a Greyhound bus station, and he went there and he caught a cab. On the corner of Lamar and Commerce Street it still is a Greyhound bus station, and allegedly at this point Oswald picked up a taxi out in front and was taken to his boarding house. In fact, you can see a couple of taxis right across the street from the bus station right now ready to pick up people. Now the Warren Commission, when they were doing their investigation, they actually found the taxi driver that gave Oswald the ride to his boarding house, and they managed to interview him, and basically he said that he just saw Oswald coming up the street here on Lamar, and Oswald walked up to the driver and said, you know, are you for hire? And the cab driver said, sure, get in. And apparently as Oswald got into the front seat, an elderly woman came up and realized that Oswald got there first, and Oswald was about ready to give up the cab to her, but she says, no, just have the driver call me a cab, you know, call another cab. Well, the driver didn't actually do that because he said he knew another taxi would be along directly. And the beauty of knowing who the taxi driver is the taxi driver was able to give us a very specific route that he took, taking Oswald to his boarding house. So let's go look at that. So from the bus station, he would have proceeded south on Lamar, turned right on Jackson, left on Austin, right on Wood, left on Houston, would have followed the Houston across the river, would have merged onto North Zhang Boulevard, and that would take him right to the intersection of North Beckley Avenue and Zhang Boulevard. So this is Zhang and Beckley, and the road we came down to was just this one here. Now there's a little bit of dispute where the driver dropped off Oswald. One report said it might have been just over here a little bit. Another one said that there's like a cross street coming over here called Nietzsche's, that I think is probably this thing here, and that he was a little bit beyond that on this side of that. But whatever the case was, he was supposed to drop him off at the 500 block of Beckley, which is a few blocks that way. Ultimately, he was going to this house here. In fact, you can actually see there's a sign in front that says Oswald Rooming House Museum. Allegedly, at about 1 o'clock, the housekeeper, Earlene Roberts, reported that Oswald immediately walked into the house in a very quick pace, walked to his bedroom, and then left a few moments later, zipping up a jacket he hadn't been wearing earlier. Now, according to his testimony in the police interrogation, he had he changed clothes, and he'd also collected a .38 caliber pistol, which he would use later to shoot Officer J.D. Tippit. He then ran out of the house really quickly and went over here to this bus stop, waiting for the bus to pick him up and hopefully take him to the movie theater where he was caught. However, it's believed that he actually ended up walking instead, because about a half a mile from here he ended up running into a police officer who seemed to recognize him from the description of the guy who had possibly assassinated JFK, and so Let's go to that location now. That's just about half a mile from here. All right, so now we're less than a mile from the boarding house at 10th and Patton. And at this point, at about 1:15, Dallas patrolman J.D. Tippit drove his patrol car alongside Oswald, who was walking at this point. It is assumed that the Oswald had given up on the bus stop and decided to walk over to the movie theater. And at this location, Officer Tippit pulled over and apparently recognized Oswald as from the description of the guy who had fired on Kennedy, and decided to investigate. And he pulled over, and Oswald immediately fired 4 shots at him, killing him. So let's read the marker here. On November 22nd, 1963, at this intersection, Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit was murdered by Lee Harvey Oswald 45 minutes after the President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dealey Plaza. After the assassination, Oswald fled to his rooming house on Oak Cliff in a neighborhood where Officer Tippit was assigned. While on patrol and traveling east on 10th Street, having just crossed Patton Street, Tippit stopped Oswald, who was walking on the sidewalk. After a brief conversation with him, through a passenger window, Tippit exited his police car, at which time Oswald fired 3 shots. Now the report I said says he fires 4, but fired 3 shots across the hood, striking Tippit as he pulled his gun. Oswald then came around the rear of the car and fired the 4th shot. Oswald left the area. Temple Boley, a citizen stopped and used Tippit's radio to call for help. Officer Tippit was taken to Methodist Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Oswald appeared at Hardy's shoe store shortly after. Manager Johnny C. Brewer heard the radio broadcast that a police officer had been shot and killed nearby. Brewer followed Oswald to the Texas Theater, where employee Julia Postal called police due to Brewster's suspicion. There, Oswald attempted to shoot off arresting officer N.M. McDonald. Tippit left behind a wife, 3 children, and is buried in Laurel Land Memorial Park. In 1964, he was posthumously awarded a Medal of Valor from the National Police Hall of Fame, the Police Medal of Honor, and the Police Cross, and Citizens Traffic Commission Award of Heroism. Although the intersection of 10th and Patton Streets has changed, Officer Tippit's actions and subsequent murder at this site are remembered for setting into motion a series of events that led directly to Oswald's arrest. So yeah, we're going to go check out those next 2 places, to Hardy's Shoe Store and the Texas Theater. That's next. And they are literally just right down the block here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk that final path. Now it's interesting, while I was outside the Texas Book Depository, I came across a group that were on a bus tour that were exploring the locations, the key locations in the Kennedy assassination. And one of the people asked if they could go to where the Tippit murder occurred, and the bus driver said, we could drive by that, but it's kind of a bad neighborhood, and apparently there was a murder here like last night. So yeah, I'm risking my tail side for you guys. At the end of Patton is Jefferson, and Oswald allegedly walked this way, headed towards the movie theater. It's kind of a trip to me that Lee Harvey Oswald probably walked on this very sidewalk. So Lee Harvey Oswald continued down Jefferson Street here, and about this point he began being aware that there was like a lot of police activity in the area, and there were police vehicles going back and forth. He became really concerned, and so he ducked into Hardy's Shoe Store, which is where this Liz Bridal and Quinceanero shop is right now, 213 Jefferson. And the manager of the store in there noticed that he was acting really, really suspicious. His name was Johnny Brewer, and he was in there working, and apparently he saw Lee kind of duck into the just inside the store there, and started looking at some of the shoes in there in a very suspicious manner as the police went by. And he had just heard that a police officer had been shot around the area, so he was kind of keeping his eyes open. So when Lee Harvey Oswald came in and started acting really suspiciously, he decided to follow him. And so once the police officers passed by, Lee Harvey left the building and began continuing down the street.
Johnny, when was the first time you saw Lee Harvey Oswald?
Saw him at Friday afternoon, November 22nd. He walked into the lobby of my store.
How far in did he walk out there, John?
Just a few feet. He was standing right about where those tennis shoes are right there, just about 5 feet from the door there.
What made you suspicious of this man who walked into the lobby?
Well, right after the President had been shot, they broadcast a description on the radio of this man. 5'8", 5'9", 150 pounds, and this Oswald matched the description. And well, just a few minutes before he walked into the lobby, on the radio they had a bulletin that an officer had been shot here in Oak Cliff, and he walked in. He matched the description. Looked scared, just the way he stood there.
You were standing right here behind the counter?
Standing right here behind the counter, listening to the radio.
And where did he walk to? How far into the lobby did he come?
He walked right into the right-hand side of the lobby there, just a few feet from the door, and stood there looking in at the shoes there.
Were there a lot of police cars in the area?
Yeah, there was a lot of police cars. There were some cars coming up Jefferson Street. They made that U-turn there and went back down Jefferson, and when they did, Oswald turned and walked up to the theater. When he went out the lobby and toward the theater, I walked out to the sidewalk and watched him go in. Then I walked up to the theater and asked Miss Postal there, the cashier, if she had sold a ticket to this man wearing the brown sports shirt, you know, his description. She called the police, and Butch stayed there at the front exit, and I went back down by the stage, the back exit, and waited there until the police came.
To get the suspect, I believe we have him in the Lincoln Theater now. 10-4.
What happened when the police came?
Well, just before the police got there, they turned the house lights on in the theater, and I looked out the curtain and saw Oswald, and he stood up and walked to the aisle there and then turned around and sat back down, almost where he had been sitting. And then I heard this noise outside and opened the door, and the police grabbed me and asked me what I was doing there, and I told them, and they asked me if the man was still in the theater. I said yes. They asked me to point him out, so three other policemen and myself walked out and pointed to him, and Officer McDonald, he was the first one to him. He approached him, and Oswald stood up.
So this is a close-up of that quinceanera shop that used to be Hardy's shoe store. And like I said, apparently Oswald went right inside the front door and waited for the police to leave. Kind of interesting that there isn't some sort of a marker out here just to commemorate this place. I had to look quite a while to figure out where it was. I knew that because I'd seen an interview with Johnny Brewer that said that he had worked in a shoe stop that was like 90 yards away from the Texas Theater, and that it was now a quinceanera shop. But that isn't really that easy to narrow down because there's like 6 quinceanera shops around here. So, but I did actually finally find an address that confirmed that it was 213, which is this building right here. This is the Texas Theater here, and Lee Harvey went into this building, bought a ticket and went in, and Johnny Brewer followed him in. He walked up to the lady at the desk here and told her to call the police, at which point she did. And then he went into the theater to look for him. I remember reading that he was thinking to himself, what am I doing? I'm not a police officer. I'm going to end up getting myself killed. But he ended up moving to the front of the theater. He identified where Oswald was. And at one point, he walked to one of the rear entrances of the theater, behind the theater, opened it up and let the police come in and pointed out where Oswald was. So let's go behind the theater and check that out. So this is the back of the Texas Theater right here. It's uncertain exactly which door he would have been. It might have been this door right here. Or perhaps one down on this end. It's hard to say. I'm not sure what the orientation of the theater is inside, but you seem to kind of go in the front area and then the building kind of moves sideways. So one of these doors, Johnny Brewer opened up and allowed the police officers into the building, and then was able to point out where Lee Harvey was seated. Now, about the time the police arrived, the lights went up inside the theater so everybody could, see what was going on, and that was when Johnny Brewer identified Oswald to the police officer, and an officer named Nick McDonald was the first to reach Oswald, and it seemed to him that Oswald was going to surrender. He even said, "Well, it's over now." And then McDonald said that Oswald pulled his pistol out of the front of his pants and pointed it at him. McDonald stated the pistol did not fire, however, because the pistol's hammer came down on the webbing between his thumb and index finger as he grabbed the pistol. McDonald also said that Oswald struck him, but that he struck back and Oswald was disarmed. As he was led from the theater, Oswald was screaming that he was a victim of police brutality. Texas Theater, 231 West Jefferson Boulevard, built in 1931. This property has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Gee, you think? And of course, we have another historical marker in this location. A lot of it just talks about the design of the building and all that, but the last paragraph gets into the real historical significance of this place. On November 22nd, 1963, following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Lee Harvey Oswald was attended in the auditorium, propelling the Texas Theater into the international spotlight. In April 1965, the theater was remodeled extensively on the exterior and interior. The uppermost section of the facade was removed, and the theater's vibrant designs were sealed under stucco. United Artists closed the theater in 1989. In 1991, it was used in the filming of the movie JFK. In 2001, Oak Cliffs Foundation bought the theater. This Dallas landmark was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2003. Aviation Cinemas reopened the theater in 2010. And that's right at the base of it. And check out all the Dallas, Texas bricks that are on the ground here around the marker. That's kind of cool. Kind of a little interesting street art along the way here on Jefferson. Let's take a look at this. This thing's pretty cool. Make my hands respect the things you have made. Got some banners up on the light poles commemorating what's going on here. Alright, we're about 4 blocks down from the police station, and I know there's not a lot of evidence at this point, but this is the location where Jack Ruby's nightclub was. It was called the Carousel Club, and let's be honest, it wasn't a nightclub, it was a strip club. He didn't do very well with money, and as a result always seemed to be in debt. But this is where the club used to be before it was torn down and became whatever this prison-looking building is here. This building has all the personality of a prison, doesn't it? But yeah, this is where it is. Let's go across the street and take a closer look. So I don't know what it is. Looks like it's an AT&T building, but they're also talking about it being some sort of an educational building, but it's still clearly under construction. In fact, when you get to the other side of it, you can see that there's still a lot of construction going on here. Across the street from this cool old hotel here. Gotta love some of the architecture around here. Holy cow, look at that. This is one of the problems you run into when you walk around in a big city like this. You don't look up. to AT&T Plaza. Yeah, you can see where the construction's going on now. Yeah, downtown Dallas is actually a beautiful area if you actually look up. Alcohol-infused ice cream. Where have you been all my life? A shot in every scoop. Get dizzy. So this is 106 South Harwood Street. This used to be the Dallas Police Station. This is the building where Oswald was assassinated by Jack Ruby, down in the basement. Basically, he'd spent 2 days here in the jail cell and being interrogated, and during that time he had confirmed that he had returned to that he had worked at the Texas Book Depository, had been there, had met with the police officer in the second floor cafeteria when he met, when he was trying to buy a Coke. He admitted to going home. He admitted to picking up the .38 revolver and changing clothes, but he denied that he owned the rifle that was used in the murder, and he denied murdering either Kennedy or Officer Tippit. While he was 2 days later, on the 24th, he was being brought through the basement of this building to be transported to county jail a few blocks away from here. And Jack Ruby was in the room when he was being transported and basically just pulled a gun and shot him in the gut. On Sunday, November 24th, detectives were escorting Oswald through the basement of the Dallas Police Headquarters towards an armored car that was going to take him from the city jail on the 4th floor up there to the county jail nearby. At 11:21, Dallas nightclub owner Jack Ruby approached Oswald from the side of the crowd, shot him once in the abdomen at close range. As the shot rang out, police detectives suddenly recognized Ruby and exclaimed, "Jack, you son of a bitch!" An unconscious Oswald was taken by ambulance to Parkland Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where Kennedy was pronounced dead 2 days earlier. Oswald died at 1:07 p.m. The autopsy report indicated that the bullet entered the left front part of his abdomen, caused damage to his spleen, stomach, aorta, vena cava, kidney, liver, and diaphragm, and the 11th rib before coming to a rest on his right side. Now, I read that the officer who was escorting Oswald said that if the bullet hadn't been stopped by Oswald's rib, it probably would have entered his stomach and caused damage to him too. Now, I'm going to go see that this place is apparently a law center now, no longer a city police station. So I'm going to go see if I can get in there, and let's see if we can go find the place. Now, here's a memorial plaque right across the street from the building that acknowledges that this is the building where Oswald was shot. So apparently they're building a museum that's being under construction right now, and there's a question whether I could come in here, but I've got someone that's going to actually take me up to one of the offices and maybe ask if I can get in here. While we were in here, though, he pointed out that this is the prisoner elevator that Oswald would have ridden down in, so that was kind of cool. Yeah, apparently my information was wrong. Oswald wasn't kept in the 4th floor. He was kept on the 5th floor. And this is actually the prison cell he was in. So that's very, very cool. Apparently the 4th floor was the floor where his mugshot was taken. And I guess I'm going to get to go down and see that too. Okay, this keeps getting better and better here. This is the actual cell that Lee Harvey Oswald was held in. Apparently when this gets opened up, no one else is even going to get a chance to come in here and see this. But since it isn't open yet, they've allowed me in to see it. There were 3 cells back here, 1, 2, and 3. And Oswald was in cell number 2. So this is where Oswald spent 2 days. Very cool in here, right? Yeah, this place is, what, probably about 8 feet by 8 feet. Looks like it probably housed 4 people. I don't know if there were 4 people in here at the time. Probably not. Yeah, so now we're back on the 4th floor here, and this is the actual location where Oswald was had his mugshot taken. And there's actually the images right there. Him being held by the police officer. And I'm guessing those electrical outlets there are probably original, the plates from there. That's very cool. Witness to history for years, police officers escorted prisoners to the 4th floor, home of the Dallas Police Department mugshot wall. Bright lights framed the seated suspect captured moments for history. 2 mugshots taken here in 1963 serve as haunting reminders of the events that unfolded in November. Both Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby had their iconic photos shot here. That's very cool. Okay, it's a little dark in here, but this is supposedly the area right here where the shooting took place. Oswald was was on his way out to the parking garage, and they built this new wall here, but these are apparently all original for the area. And this is where it actually happened. This is kind of the shot where Oswald and the police officer would have been coming in this direction, and Jack Ruby would have come on from this side.
There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's the man with a gun. It's absolute panic. Absolute panic here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. The detectives have their guns drawn. Oswald has been shot. There is no question about it. Oswald has been shot.
And shot him in the abdomen. So this is amazing. I actually got to see this. This place, like I said, is still under construction. So I kind of have to be careful where I walk around. They don't even have lights in here. Oh man, I am stoked beyond reason that I got to actually see that. That prison cell, you know, you're going to have to look at that through glass like I did initially. Nobody is going to get to go inside of that. So that is exclusive to me. You're never going to see that anywhere else. And he took us into the garage where Oswald was shot. We saw the mugshot wall. That is amazing. So I got to definitely give a shout out to my new best friend in the world, Ford, for making that happen. That was amazing, because when I went in there originally, they said, yeah, they're kind of making it into a museum right now, and you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to come back at some other point. And they said, so where are you staying? And I said, well, I live in Waco. And they said, oh, okay. Well, let me take you upstairs, and I'll show you a couple things. And it just went from there. So, wow, I'm stoked that I got all that. Okay, so here we come to the end of our story. Here's the final resting place of Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, I find it interesting that all over his markers there are these little red, there are all these little wooden hearts with the word love all over them. And they're kind of all spread around the marker. There's obviously some significance to that. Probably somebody brought them out and placed them on the marker. But, you know, they're just even on the grass around the marker. Now, I did find something interesting also, that the grave right next to Lee Harvey Oswald is Nick Beef. I was trying to figure out what that was all about, and when I dug into it on Find a Grave, I found out what the story was. Apparently, initially, this cemetery would not tell anyone the location of where Lee Harvey Oswald was buried. So a comedian bought just a fake headstone. There's no one buried here, and told people that if you wanted to find out where Lee Harvey Oswald was, go into the cemetery and ask where Nick Beef was buried. And he was buried, and Oswald was buried right next to him. Turns out the cemetery got wind of that too, and now if you ask where Nick Beef is buried, they'll say there's no Nick Beef here. But yeah, that's what that's all about. But here's the original Oswald, where Oswald is buried. Now, apparently there was originally a headstone that said, his full name and birth and death date and that, but apparently that was stolen. So it's just been replaced by just a simple one that says Oswald. Now, you may have noticed on this whole thing, I've really kind of stayed away from the conspiracy theories because there's just a ton of them surrounding what was going on here. I decided I really wanted to focus on just the three major characters involved in this, which were Kennedy, Oswald, and Ruby, and kind of tell their stories at least as officially as I could, and kind of follow the path of their lives. So if you feel the need to discuss the conspiracy theories, feel free to do it in the comments section, but that's why I didn't really touch on the subject here. So this concludes my video on the JFK assassination. I hope you found this interesting and informative, and maybe that I provided a little bit of insight into this that you've never seen before. So as always, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.